Mysterious bloodstains in my bed lead to a shocking discovery. Hidden black mold in my attic room causing my hay fever symptoms. Let me just start by saying that I am a man, and so I don't get a period. I have been living on my own in Amsterdam for a while now. It's a nice little room in the attic. It's old, nice, and feels very cozy. I don't live in a dorm, but I live with an older lady who has 2 cats. I'm allergic to myself, so when those cats come this way I chase them out the door. Now I have a problem. A few days ago I woke up with clothes on, my closet turned over and clothes on the floor. Shit. Sleepwalking can happen. Now things are getting a little weird. On the entire left side of my double bed, from head to toe, there is a long trail of blood. As if something bloody has been running over it. This can't be the cats because they don't come into my room at night, and it also seems unlikely to me that an injured animal has been walking there because if something bleeds that much it should be visible somewhere else in the room, right? It also seemed unlikely to me that I myself bled a vertical trail in my sleep, but I didn't think anything else of it. I cleaned it up and that was that. But this morning, a few days later, I woke up blood everywhere again on that side of the bed. And with blood everywhere, I really mean a trail you can't miss. And the smell. I woke up because of the smell and not even my alarm clock. 6:30. I went to ask the housewife what she thinks this could be. She smiled for a moment and said, "Maybe your room is haunted." Well, that didn't make it better. I'm now sitting in the bathroom scrubbing that sheet again and trying not to throw up. I don't know what's going on here, but could this be a weird hazing problem? And by that I mean student hazing. Is this a normal thing they do in Amsterdam? Smear blood on your bed? I'm just saying. I'm from Brussels. I know there are weird things happening here. I don't get it at all, especially because I've scanned my whole body and there are no wounds anywhere. Has anyone experienced something similar? Is my room genuinely possessed? Sorry if this is a stupid question, but I'm kind of done with it. Relevant comments. Commenter, have read this before. Someone who had bled from his ears. You don't often see that, so it's logical that you don't see a wound. Have your ears checked. And place a camera if you're not sure. Maybe just block the door on the inside or something. OOP, I'm definitely going to do that. Good idea? I'll ask the doctor right after class today to schedule an appointment. Commenter, please go get a carbon monoxide meter from Action Praxis, those things are €10. Nausea and smelling things that aren't there, you mentioned sulfur, are both symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning, plus the fact that this is happening in winter, so you probably have more heating stove on than normal. OP. I'm pretty scared of this now. I just checked the symptoms online and they do match. I'm going straight to the hardware store after class. Starting to get nervous about this, haha. Commenter. Perhaps something about bedbugs that you roll flat in your sleep after they feed. OP, yuck. It's on the comforter though. Don't think I rolled over them, but could have been an answer. Commenter, you specifically mentioned that the first time that you woke up with clothes on, different clothes therefore than you had fallen asleep with. Were there other weird things this morning or just blood? OP, yes, different clothes than what I went to bed with. I went to sleep in my pajamas, logical, and I woke up with my sweater and jeans on. I have never walked before, this morning only blood. Thank God. Otherwise I would have scheduled an appointment with the psychologist. Update. Few days later. Update. For the past few days I've been staying at my friend's house, see if it's mysteriously bleeding there too. I ordered a camera, and nothing happened. Until yesterday morning. I went back home, went to the doctor on the way because I suffer from hay fever. And once home just checked the cats for being in heat. Turns out they're both male, unfortunately. I set up the camera in a can, thanks to whoever advised that, and went into the space behind my room with a CO detector to measure it. The second I got in there I smelled a very familiar smell, exactly the smell that vaguely smelled like blood. Now that I know what it is, I would associate it more with meat, but the smell of blood came very close. Anyway, I grabbed the CO detector, shirt in front of my nose and put that thing to work. Nothing wrong. Anyway, I called my friend because the smell was very specific. She was there within an hour, and she too thought it smelled very strangely of blood. It's a large attic, which smells of blood and rotted flesh, and there are things everywhere in the dark. Of course my imagination ran wild. My girlfriend also started to get the jitters, and after an hour of pondering we decided to call the police. Well, they showed up on my doorstep after 4 hours, and together we went upstairs. The police also smelled the odor, and it was so convincing that some other special agents were called in before they went up into the attic. Very long story short. After a long wait and search they didn't find a body, but they did find mold. All over the wall against my room. Under the baseboards, On the roof. Black mold everywhere. Immediately relieved that my landlord wasn't a murderer, but black mold isn't a fun joke either. In the meantime, I've moved all my stuff and am temporarily living with my girlfriend until the problem is solved. Even then, I don't know if I'll go back, because the landlord wasn't very happy that I kind of suspected her of murder. But that's another story. It's funny because as the doctor said when I came in with my hay fever, it's remarkable that you're suffering from it now. He was right. The itchy eyes, the nosebleed in my sleep, yes it turned out to be a nosebleed, the sleepwalking, the tired days, everything in place. End of story. I do want to thank you all individually for your kind messages and earnest attempts to help. Thanks to you, I went behind the room to check that meter. I wonder if I would have found out about the fungus if I hadn't. Thanks so much really. Relevant comments. Comment 1. I get it's not as bad as a body, but the thought of there being black mold all around me in the walls, growing day after day is still skin-crawling awful. And I wish more people realized how shit hay fever, and other allergies is and how many symptoms there are. I think people think it's just sneezing a bit, not the weeks of misery some of us experience. Comment 2. The lady's reaction of, maybe your room is haunted. Makes me feel like she knew there was a problem but they just didn't want to deal with it. Which is why the landlord is unhappy. Since now the authorities are involved they have no choice but to clean it up. I want a brand new hot tub. Is this a literal white elephant gift and upkeep nightmare? Should I keep or sell? Original post. Like the title says, I won the grand prize in a raffle. It's a beautiful 6-person hot tub, and I would love to own one someday. The thought of snowboarding all day and coming home to a hot tub soak sounds amazing. I do have a backyard that has room for it, but I would need to get electrical outlets added, would need to flatten the ground for a concrete pad, possibly get plumbing, then there's the delivery, accessories and upkeep. Are there any frugal hot tub owners out there? What is upkeep like? Do you really use it often enough to justify the cost? I'm not afraid to do the hard work necessary to install it, but wondering if in the long run am I wasting all this money to upkeep costs? My wife keeps suggesting that we sell it and use it for a trip. What do you think? Some of OOP's comments. Relevant comments. Commenter. I installed a hot tub at my last house. If you are going to use it and enjoy it, it's never going to be cheap. Chemical and water costs aren't too bad, and in my opinion it's not that much of a hassle, but leaving the tub on 24/7 365 has considerable electricity costs, especially if you're in an area cold enough to snowboard. Our hot tub was costing us about $200 a month to run in the winter, and about $50 a month in the summer. And that's just water, electricity, and chemicals. That doesn't include repair and maintenance costs, which are low the first few years but get intense once the tub gets older. Personally, I want to be using it a few times a week to have it feel worthwhile. It was worth it for me at the time, but I don't think I'd make the choice now. I'd just go on an extra couple of Airbnb weekends at places with hot tubs. I've decided that outdoor saunas are much cheaper and easier to use and maintain. That's what I'll be looking at for my next home instead of a hot tub. OOP, all good advice, thank you. Commenter, they will have a cash value but that doesn't mean they can take the cash instead. A lot of times companies donate them as a write-off and they get the benefit of marketing and exposure. You don't have the choice between the prize and cash. OOP, this is most likely the case with my prize. I think I'd have to sell it on the FB marketplace or something similar. Commenter, check first. Why would you assume this is most likely the case? And now that I'm so invested in this, let me know. OOP. It was a raffle at the birthday party at the company my wife works at. The hot tub place is next door and was donated to the raffle after the owner did a work for trade thing with their business. So knowing a little of the behind the scenes maneuvering, I'm fairly sure it's a write-off donation and there's no cash prize equivalent. But I'm still going to ask. Commenter, did you have to provide your SSN when you accepted it? That would be a red flag of getting taxed on it. OOP, I haven't accepted it yet. Someone reminds OOP they'd probably need a permit and/or inspections. Didn't even think about the permits and municipal inspection. Good points, thank you. Commenter, OMG, my dream, keep it. OP, it was my dream too. I went to the raffle specifically to try and win the hot tub, so now that my dream came true I'm really trying to make the happy ending work. After all these comments I'm leaning towards selling it. The power costs are definitely a factor where I am. It's already been 300 plus some months. Commenter, snowboarder with hot tub here. Do it, you'll never regret it. OOP, damn it, LOL, the choice is so hard. I may try and see if they will do a sauna instead. Bought a season pass to Brighton this year, gonna be up there a lot. Commenter, where are you located? I'm in the market for one if you're looking to sell and we happen to be not too far. Feel free to PM if you'd like. OOP, Utah. Update post. Thank you all for so many helpful comments. Like I said, I was super excited to own a hot tub. I thought I had the perfect spot for it and was ready to do everything I could to get it installed. All the commenters brought up a lot of great points that I didn't consider. One was the increase in energy bills. Our electricity has recently undergone a 30% hike and in the summer is over $300 a month now. Adding a hot tub in the winter would have added $100-200 per month to that bill, as we live in a cold, snowy climate. 2 was the spot we picked out for it. After measuring where we thought it would go, we realized the spot wasn't big enough to fit the tub and we would have to put it somewhere that had a bit more room. This meant I would have had to run a longer electrical line, had to rip out part of an edged pathway and build a new gravel pad. The new spot had no privacy. It was in direct view of the neighbor's window, so adding some sort of privacy barrier would have been another cost. And it was still 20 feet from where we wanted it, which means in the winter I'd have to shovel a walkway to it and clear it all off. I know in the winter this is going to be a big factor in not using it, because it wouldn't be convenient to get to. There was the HOA, and resale of the home. A lot of people mentioned that hot tubs can be considered a liability to the home when selling, as well as issues with HOAs, permits, and inspections. That wasn't something we considered, and while we do plan on being in this home for a while, it's not our forever home. And 4 was the total cost and taxes. It will be reported to the IRS as a $10,000 prize, so I imagine I'd have to pay anywhere from $1,500 to $3,500 extra taxes next year, in addition to the $2,000 I would have had to spend on the electrician, adding a gravel pad, delivery fees, as well as the increase in water and power bills monthly. That could be something like $5,000 getting everything up and running and installed, and not something I anticipated spending before Christmas. So, here's what I did instead. I asked the owner of the hot tub place if I could convert the hot tub I want into a sauna instead, and he said yes. So I'm getting a super nice infrared indoor sauna that will sit inside my basement. It doesn't need expensive new power lines run, and no other associated upkeep costs going forward other than the power used. All in all, I'm super happy with the outcome. A tiny bit disappointed I don't get to soak in a hot tub, but I can still go snowboarding all day and come home to a nice heat soak. Thanks again, everyone. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. That's a bloody clever solution. I love that you negotiated. Very few people realize that negotiation gets results. See, why Flora is about to recruit an entire office building to negotiate with the landlords about getting some much needed accessibility upgrades. I mean, I'm a mediator, so I would say this. But jolly good for you anyway. OOP. Thank you. Someone in the original thread mentioned a sauna and it got me thinking. I work with a lot of small businesses, so I'm used to negotiating and finding solutions. Commenter. And the post doesn't include the chemicals that are added to the water regularly. OOP. A lot of the original commenters said that those weren't too expensive, so I didn't include that, but definitely a factor as well. Commenter. Saunas are such a godsend and genuinely beneficial for your health. Brilliant move. And I know sauna rooms can be a nice incentive when selling OOP. Good to hear. We went with an infrared one because of the health benefits. I'm excited to try it out. Karen won't take our son trick-or-treating, calling Halloween silly. Am I the jerk for insisting she lets him enjoy it? For weeks, my 7-year-old eldest Liam has been giddy with anticipation for Halloween. Convinced that trick-or-treating is the year's high point, he hasn't stopped talking about it. However, I must admit that I find the entire situation somewhat absurd. Although I am aware that Halloween is observed in other nations, it seems absurd to me that we live in Australia. I've never seen any decorations, and it's not customary here, at least not in our neighborhood. In fact, the few placards I've seen openly criticize Halloween because they believe it to be un-Australian. We haven't had a single trick-or-treater come on our door in the 5 years we've been here, but I still buy a large bag of candy every year just in case. Sorry, but it's just not something people do here, I have been saying to Liam. Liam's excitement peaked as Halloween drew near. He was asking to go trick-or-treating, practically jumping off the walls. I attempted to explain that it wasn't typical in this area, but he didn't seem to care. All he wanted to do was dress up and go candy hunting with his 5-year-old brother, Noah, who was just as excited. My wife, Alicia, flatly refused to take them when I brought it up to her. She sneered, "It's just a silly American tradition. I want to avoid wasting my time on it." I was annoyed. Alicia wouldn't even think about making things special for Liam, who was all fired up for something he perceived as amazing. I attempted to talk her out of it, but she refused to listen. She insisted, "I have better things to do." The issue was that I was unable to take them myself because I had a work trip planned that would take me away on Halloween. Perhaps you could take them out for a short while. I recommend it. She gave a headshake. I simply fail to see the purpose. I would want to unwind at home. Halloween is nothing more than an exaggerated candy grab. I grew increasingly irritated the more I considered it. It felt unfair to deprive our children the opportunity to celebrate something that so many others get to, and I didn't want to start a fight. I began thinking that, even if it meant defying Alicia's desires, I should just take kids to a neighborhood where trick-or-treating is accepted. I finally said, "I can't believe you won't even consider it," after a long day of back and forth. It's the only night of the year, so they're thrilled. Is this asking for too much? Alicia's face was set in defiance as she crossed her arms. Perhaps you should have considered that before planning your trip if you truly care that much. I'm not going to do it, it's absurd. Dejected, I took out my phone to research Halloween activities. Even if Alicia is reluctant, perhaps I could find a way to make it work if I couldn't take them. Update. At last, I discovered a neighborhood gathering that provided a secure environment for trick-or-treating. Since it's before I depart for my trip, I made the decision to take them there personally. Even if it meant getting some blowback from Alicia for defying her wishes, I couldn't wait to see the joy on their faces. This entire circumstance has been the final nail in the coffin. I eventually made the decision to inform Alicia that I wanted a divorce because I've been tired of her attitude for a long time. I'm currently cleaning up our house, which she essentially ruined before leaving to live with her sister, and she handled it about as well as I had anticipated. After years of bullying, my sister invited me to dinner. When I arrived, she made me clean up, calling me a pathetic waitress. My parents have never concealed the fact that my sister, Helen, has always been the best child in the family. The youngest of my parents' children, she was considered their miracle child. Despite having serious health issues, my parents had been trying for years to have another child after me. My parents were effectively told to give up on growing their family after my mother experienced problems following my delivery, which prompted physicians to advise against getting pregnant again. But my mother defied all expectations and got pregnant again 5 years later. For my father, who was thrilled about the possibility of having another child, this news was nothing short of a miracle. This position as a miracle baby had a significant impact on my sister's upbringing and the way my parents regarded her. They have always treated her like a queen, going above and beyond to make sure she has the finest of everything. Her unique position within the family was further cemented by the lavish celebration of each of her accomplishments and milestones. It was obvious to everyone, including me, that my sister had a special and elevated place in our parents' affections since this partiality was never covert. Rather, it was publicly expressed and accepted. Not to be misunderstood, my parents also made sure I had all I needed. However, their treatment of me frequently seemed like an afterthought. For example, school functions. My parents would always choose to go to my sister's function if we had activities on the same day. As if my wants and occurrences were somehow less significant, they would explain that she was the youngest and so required them more. My parents still treasure the innumerable childhood photos of my sister that are painstakingly arranged in albums. They haven't even saved one of my albums, on the other hand, saying that my photos were lost in a storm. I would have liked to see how I grew up, therefore I wish they could have at least saved a couple photos. When my early life wasn't kept the same way as my sister's, it's difficult to avoid feeling like an afterthought. When I was growing up, my sister Helen's problems, no matter how minor, were promptly addressed and fixed. However, my father would brush me off and label me spoiled if I ever complained or wanted something. My mother would reprimand me for being more confident like my sister and accuse me of being overly theatrical if I ever felt nervous about trying new things or approaching strangers. I always felt that my sister's worries and emotions were more important than mine because of the way my parents treated me. Then came the game of blame. I was also held accountable for my sister's activities if she ever committed a transgression. My parents say that since I was the eldest, I ought to have taught her to be better. Because of my birth order, I was always held accountable, even if I had nothing to do with her behavior. This unwarranted ongoing blaming made me even more of the underdog and made me live in perpetual shadow of my sister. Helen didn't help either. She was well aware of how to take advantage of her status as the favorite child, and frequently used it to outdo me or get away with things. She would often coerce me into letting her use my possessions or put on my clothes without my consent during even the most minor arguments. She would go to our parents and complain if I ever ventured to object, accusing me of being conceited and self-centered. I would unavoidably receive criticism for not sharing and be made to feel guilty in every circumstance. But Helen's actions were distinctly biased. She was always very protective of her belongings and never let me touch them. We shared a room for a long time, and she aggressively protected her side and possessions. The dynamic remained the same even after we went into different rooms. She was quite particular about her belongings, but she always wanted me to be understanding and giving with mine. It was discouraging and frustrating to experience this double standard. I always felt alone and underappreciated because of Helen's ability to control circumstances to her advantage and my parents' steadfast support of her. They believed Helen could do no wrong, while I was always in the wrong, regardless of what I did. I had severe depression as a result of my parents' and sister's behavior. As a teenager, I experienced severe problems with my self-image and my confidence began to decline. Particularly when Helen would argue with me or make fun of me, the tension was unbearable. I was constantly on edge due to my fear of confrontation, and I frequently felt like I was about to have a panic attack because of my parents' combative yelling. I would feel as though I was choking beneath the weight of their disappointment and rage when they approached too close during their outbursts. My family didn't seem to be aware of or concerned about my difficulties. With no one to turn to for help, I felt like an animal in a cage, caught in a vicious cycle of mental and emotional suffering. Writing down my thoughts in a journal was therefore the only thing that gave me comfort. I would write my heart out on those pages every night, sharing my sorrows, disappointments, and anxieties. It was the only setting where I felt free to be totally open about my situation. It gave me some serenity and allowed me to process the pandemonium around me. Because I was worried that Helen may discover the journal and make fun of my weaknesses, I always kept it hidden beneath my bed. My worst nightmare came true one day. While I was out, Helen, who had a tendency of prying into my room even though I had repeatedly asked her to leave, discovered my journal. My one haven must have been violated when she read through its contents. My parents and Helen were seated in the living room with particularly serious expressions when I got home that evening. Given their solemn looks, I assumed there might have been a death in the family and inquired about their well-being. In order to speak with me, my dad asked me to sit down. As I obeyed, my heart began to race and I had a bad sensation in my stomach. Then, from behind her, my mother took my journal. When I demanded to know what she was doing with my journal, my eyes dilated in amazement and disbelief. While my mother gave me an unusually serious look and inquired as to whether what I had written actually expressed my innermost sentiments, Helen simply grinned, taking pleasure in my pain. I felt completely exposed and deceived at that very moment. My notebook had been my lone haven, where I could vent my suffering and annoyance without worrying about criticism or mockery. My deepest innermost thoughts were now exposed to the very people who inspired me to compose them. I was overcome by the seriousness of the situation, and while I fought to react, I could feel a panic attack coming. Yes, it did reflect my thoughts, I said gently, adding that they had no right to read it. My father shook his head and informed me that they were really worried about me if what I had written was accurate. He went on to add that after reading my journal, they felt that I was a psychopath, who needed assistance because of the hatred they thought I had for them, and I gazed at them in confusion. I was shocked beyond belief. I had never said anything harsh about my sister or my parents in my whole journal. All I had done was write down the feelings and experiences their acts had given me over the years. But here they were, turning my sincere thoughts into something evil. For keeping a notebook, my parents began accusing me of writing such dark things, and even calling me a psychopath. My mother continued by accusing me of making things up to fill the book and saying that neither she nor my father had ever treated me in this manner. I needed serious help, she insisted, before I harmed someone. Helen went so far as to comment that she was ashamed to call me her sister after reading my notebook since my actions were clearly not normal. Retorting that I had done nothing wrong and that I had not written anything negative about them, I attempted to defend myself. I clarified that they had no authority to condemn me based on my personal reflections because the notebook was only about my life. My family, however, was obsessed with their story that something was wrong with me and didn't care about my explanations. In front of them, I felt so vulnerable and exposed. They seemed to have taken away the last remnant of my privacy and turned it against me. The very following day, my parents informed me that I needed serious help before things turned south, and that they would be taking me to see a psychiatrist. It was obvious that they perceived me as the issue because of the disdain and misdirected worry in their statements. I experienced a crippling sense of powerlessness and betrayal. Instead of admitting the pain and harm they had caused, it seemed as though they were intent on making me the issue and changing the course of events. I was deeply hurt by the betrayal, and their reaction made me feel even more alone and powerless than I had already felt. I felt quite uneasy and guilty at first when I started seeing a psychiatrist, as though I had actually done something wrong. I was ashamed to express my thoughts as I had accepted the notion that I was the problem in my family. My psychiatrist recognized my hesitancy and attempted to close the distance by using my notebook. I felt more at ease and was able to open up when she read entries from it and asked me questions based on what I had written. Since it had always been easier for me to express myself on paper than in person, the journal was a useful tool throughout our meetings. But as I was getting married to the love of my life, everything changed. My parents contacted me after learning about my impending nuptials via cousins and other family members. They were obviously shocked to be left out of such a significant event in my life. They made an unexpected call. They reluctantly expressed sorry for their previous actions and acknowledged their wrongdoings. Since I was going to have a family of my own, they acknowledged that even though they couldn't alter the past, they still wanted to make new memories with me. They pleaded with me to pardon them and let them share in this new phase of my life. Their apologies was a surprising turn of events that had me face a variety of feelings. I chose to forgive them and invite my parents to my wedding since I was starting a new chapter in my life. In addition, they asked my sister to come, but I flatly refused, and they didn't pursue the matter. In retrospect, I'm glad I invited my parents, who had a great time at the wedding. The decision seemed natural since they were truly thrilled for my husband and myself. Since then I've tried to occasionally go over to my parents' house for supper in order to catch up. I occasionally have to talk to my sister on these visits. She still attempts to enrage me by making insensitive remarks about my marriage or my family, but I always make sure to confront her conduct head-on and correct her. Helen has only grown more resentful of me over the years, particularly after learning that I get along better with my in-laws than she does with her husband's family. Her in-laws have never truly embraced her into their family and apparently still hate her. She tries to put them down by making subtle remarks about my spouse or my in-laws. She expresses her annoyance and discontent with her personal situation through these comments. Helen keeps making these harsh remarks despite my dad's repeated observations of her behavior and his request for her to cease. I was told I was pregnant 4 months ago. My spouse and I are ecstatic about the news. He makes twice as much as I do, so we agreed that I should take a temporary leave of absence to concentrate on the pregnancy. My spouse and my in-laws, who have been quite sympathetic and supportive along this process, fully back this decision. My sister was incensed when she learned that I had chosen to quit my career in order to stay at home with my unborn child. Because they needed both of their earnings to make ends meet, her husband never permitted her to be a stay-at-home mother, which was the source of her rage. Helen never had the opportunity to unwind or take a break during her pregnancy, unlike me. As a result, whenever we get together, she criticizes my choice to express her displeasure. She has referred to me as foolish, and suggested that being a stay-at-home mom is humiliating. On multiple occasions, I have just laughed off her comments and told her that I had years of experience and could go back to work whenever I chose. Helen, however, has attempted to manipulate the issue by claiming that I should never have given up on my profession and that my husband is being domineering. This strikes me as ironic because I chose to leave my job. I am aware that her attempts to discredit my choice are obviously motivated more by her personal discontent with her life than by any genuine criticism of my decisions. I have made every effort to avoid her in order to preserve my mental health and give my whole attention to enjoying my pregnancy. My sister contacted me a week ago to invite me to a dinner party she was throwing. She wanted my spouse and I to go, and she intended to invite her in-laws and our whole family. I viewed this dinner gathering as a welcome diversion and an opportunity to mingle, as I hadn't gone out much since my pregnancy. I was more motivated to go since I reasoned that my sister would probably pay less attention to me with so many people around. Although I consented to go, things didn't work out that night. My spouse had to work late into the night to finish some last-minute chores. He was already under a lot of stress and he kept apologizing to me for being late to work. I didn't hold it against him because I knew that these things may happen. We were already running late for the dinner party when he finally arrived to pick me up. I thought it was better to be late than not at all, so I chose not to cancel despite the delay. As soon as we got to my sister's house, I saw that most of the people there had already eaten dinner and were chatting casually. My dad doesn't feel comfortable driving at night, so even my parents went after supper. My sister chastised us for being late right away, and although I didn't blame her for being irritated, I took the initiative to apologize on my husband's behalf because he was obviously humiliated by the circumstance. I was relieved when Helen ushered my husband to a chair and brought him a plate of food, but she drew me aside and led me into the kitchen. There she disclosed that there was no food left for me because everyone had already consumed their second or even third helping. This realization surprised me, especially since I was already really hungry and felt even more so because I was pregnant. I was disappointed, but I decided not to dispute or voice my displeasure. I told her that I could just order something online because I knew that our tardiness had caused this trouble. I could still eat in this manner without creating any more trouble. It was nice of her to nod and offer to order me something. However, she informed me that the least I could do tonight was wash the dishes because I had arrived so late and hadn't contributed much during the evening. I was surprised when she asked. I sneered and informed her that I hadn't anticipated being asked to work for her just because I was late for the dinner party invitation. Because I was late, I thought it was ridiculous to expect me to clear her visitors' plates. She reacted quickly and angrily. As her sister, I should be helping her, especially since she's been cooking so much all day, she shot out in a low, angry tone. She said that as my mother had assisted her in serving the guests at dinner, I should do the same because I was related. Helen made it clear that she wanted my assistance because her husband was never helpful in the kitchen. I countered that Helen shouldn't have invited so many people if she was feeling overburdened. She responded angrily and contemptuously, telling me that the least I could do was to keep quiet and provide her a hand because I would never be able to comprehend her predicament. In a scathing comment, she went on to say that it wasn't a huge problem if I assisted her as well because, now that I was pregnant, I was just a pathetic waitress for my husband at home. Her scathing remarks caught me off guard and were really painful. The weight of her remarks caused tears to build up in my eyes, adding to my already present feelings of hunger and emotional vulnerability. I hurried into one of Helen's bedrooms and closed the door behind me because I didn't want her to see me in distress. I had to locate a place where I could gather myself. Once inside, the usual feeling of being unable to breathe was overwhelming, and I could feel my old panic attack beginning to re-emerge. I fervently prayed that no one, including my spouse, would notice my misery and pursue me. I needed this alone time to get some peace and regain emotional control. After calming down and giving it some thought, I believed that Helen deserved to be disciplined once and for all because of her constant remarks and the way she continued to treat me. I made the decision to act against her. Finding all the pictures I had taken of my old journals was the first thing I did. I took my journal with me when I left my parents' house, and throughout the years, I began to save pictures of the journal entries in my email so I would always have a copy. I was able to locate pictures of my old journal entries, which described all the humiliations and complaints I had suffered at the hands of my sister years ago, thanks to this. Since my sister was only terrified of my brother-in-law, I decided to send him all the pictures before my husband and I departed that evening. I was aware that my parents would just chastise her for her behavior toward me, but she would never, ever change. I wanted Helen to go through a small portion of the humiliation that her husband rightfully inflicted upon her. I sent him a thorough letter outlining how Helen had been a major bully in my life. Helen had asked me to the dinner party, but I had to clean up after her and the other guests, I wrote in the message. I explained that she seemed to be jealous of my more thoughtful husband, which is why she was upset with me. In the hopes that he might better understand or take action, I tried to give him a clear picture of Helen's behavior and how it had affected me. Bill and Helen got into a heated argument as a result, as you may guess. Bill told our parents that he now saw Helen differently since he couldn't believe she had been harassing me for years. My dad has chosen to be a little more neutral, but my mother fully blames me for their argument since she feels that I went too far by exposing my sister. I have no regrets about letting my sister see her spouse. Update 1. For those who are curious, after learning what my sister said to me at the party, my husband is just as furious with her. He didn't know, but when I told him everything, he called my sister to vent his annoyance and correct her. I've never witnessed him so agitated, and Helen must have been really unsettled by his response. Additionally, he has made it very apparent to her that she should stop talking about our family going forward, especially since she is unaware of the whole truth. Update 2. My brother-in-law is furious with Helen since his own family has always thought she is egotistical and careless. Throughout their entire marriage, Helen had a tendency to place the blame for any argument or quarrel on everyone but herself. Because he loves her, Bill has been lenient toward her for a long time. But it was really eye-opening for him when I showed him my journal entries. He had never known our complex past, but he had always sensed that Helen and I were not particularly close. He had only witnessed a superficial aspect of our relationship and was ignorant of the seriousness of the problems that had existed between us because Helen had conveniently never told him the truth. His perception of my sister was drastically changed after hearing my side of the tale, which at last filled in a lot of the blanks. It demonstrated even more how accurate his family's assessment of Helen was. Bill told me all of this when he contacted me this week. He also wanted to hear it all straight from my point of view. We had a lengthy phone discussion, and I was more than happy to talk. I described all the hardships I'd gone through as a child, highlighting the way my parents had always given preference to my sister. Before I nearly cut them off after leaving for college, I told my parents how my psychiatrist had attempted to address these problems with them, but they had never admitted their mistakes. My brother-in-law also talked candidly about his own interactions with Helen throughout our talk. He described how she would occasionally treat him similarly, but he had always dismissed it as just her being herself. Even though he was aware of his own shortcomings in their relationship, he was shocked to learn about the ways she had harassed me over the years, even as an adult. It has truly caused him to reconsider their relationship as a whole. Helen may be acting harshly toward their child behind his back, which worries him as well. Update 3. For the final time, I'm answering some of your questions. After the party, my sister wrote me a number of angry texts and, of course, blamed me for everything. My husband had to step in and stop her. She hasn't contacted me or spoken to me since. Second, my mom has insisted that I inform Bill that I over-exaggerated the events from my early years and apologize. I adamantly declined, stating that my husband and I would cut her off if she persisted in endorsing my sister's position. But my father knows why I did what I did. Finally, I'm not sure what Bill will decide about his connection with Helen. My ultimate objective was to expose my sister and show her that she couldn't continue to get away with disparaging me. I have absolutely no regrets about what I did. Bill is now entirely responsible for determining what is best for his future. I get uninvited from my brother's wedding, then get harassed by his family for not caring enough. Original post. This whole thing is so weird. I, 27M, am gay. I came out at 16 and my parents told me they would always love me, but to not mention it to my older brother who I'll call Brick. Then 19M 30M now. When I was confused and asked why, they said that Brick had expressed some awful opinions about gay people. I limited talking to Brick until I moved out at 18, which wasn't much of a problem because we were never close. I went to uni, got a good job, and an awesome boyfriend, 28M, in my home city. Me and my boyfriend Angel live a peaceful life. Peaceful until a few days ago when I got a call from my brother. I was concerned that Brick was calling me, as we have never messaged before, just had each other's numbers for emergency purposes. I picked up because maybe there was some emergency happening. He opened the call with an annoyed, "Hey man," and I knew something was up. He said he was getting married to his fiancée Yen, 24F next year. I didn't even know he had a girlfriend. I was like, "That's great, Brick," and asked some boring wedding things that he begrudgingly answered. He then told me invites were being sent out in a couple weeks, and that I could bring a +1. Here's where I made the mistake that started this mess. Without thinking like an idiot, I said, "Cool, I'll bring my boyfriend." Major mess up. Brick immediately started yelling insults down the line, screaming that he wouldn't have an FF slur at his wedding. I didn't say anything and just hung up. I was rattled by hearing those words from my own brother's mouth, even though I knew his feelings about people like me. I told Angel, and he comforted me, ordering in my favorite restaurant and watching movies with me, which was awesome. We went to bed later and I felt alright the next day. I sent my parents a message that Brick invited me and uninvited me from his wedding pretty much in the same breath, and went on my way to work. Not a clue of the crapstorm waiting for me when I got off. When I turned my phone on again after my shift, it was blowing up. Messages and calls from my parents and relatives galore asking me what the F happened. I phoned my parents back when I got home and gave them the rundown of what happened and said I honestly didn't care because it's not like Brick would be coming to my wedding anyways. My parents immediately chastised me for my obvious disinterest and disregard of my brother's life, and told me I should be apologizing to him for bringing my personal life into his wedding. What? I basically told my parents to screw off and have been getting bombarded with messages from relatives to apologize to my brother and get my invite reinstated, and apologize to my parents for disrespecting them, but I really don't want to. Angel's reassuring me that I did nothing wrong, but it's still nagging me. AAETA, relevant comment. OK_number_4988. Why did your brother sound annoyed at the beginning of the call? Did he already know? Or was he being forced to invite you by your parents? Seems weird. OOP, he's never been my biggest fan, honestly. We were very different as kids, like polar opposites, and he didn't like that. Very on brand for him. He definitely didn't know I was gay before the call. My parents have kept it very under wraps for years. In terms of if he was being forced to invite me by my parents, I really have zero clue. Update post. My OG post got locked was removed per some misunderstanding/confusion with the AITA mods while trying to post this update, but I'll just post it on my page here without an r/, if anyone wants to see it. Y'all have really opened my eyes on a lot of issues in my family. I apologize for only replying to a few comments. There's just so many of you. Big shout out to all the people who gave compliments to Angel. I showed him this post last night and he thanks you all. I've been showing him lots of love because he really is an angel. And to the people calling this fake, AI, cliche and whatnot. I hate to break it to you all, but this is just my life. It sounds cliche because this is the sort of all too real thing that happens to many people in the community. Just move along if you want to say that stuff, because you're honestly just wasting your time. One of two things I would also like to address is people questioning me about thinking I could possibly be the AH in this situation, and all I can say is that when you have a mass of people telling you you're wrong for what you did, it's hard to not maybe believe them just a little bit, no matter how absurd it is. Second thing, for people wondering how no one in the family knew I was gay, I really was never am not close with my extended family, as they all live in different provinces, and my immediate family never traveled. We really just send each other holiday and birthday messages and have brief conversations whenever those are sent, and I just never had the urge to come out to them. Anyways, on to the update. I decided I didn't want to let this sit for any longer. I took a day off work, and I added my parents, Brick, and all the family that messaged and called me into one big group chat, per one advice I saw here. I laid out everything that went down to them, in case they were told a different story by my parents and brother. I told them that I was going NC with my parents and Brick no matter what, and if they didn't apologize and realize what they did wrong, or I cut them off too. I turned my phone off and continued on without it for the rest of the day. Once I turned my phone on again, I had lots of messages from them. My parents were outraged, and Brick said nothing. Some of my extended family apologized and told me that my parents just told them I was mean to Brick about some of his wedding plan choices, which got me uninvited. Still trying to wrap my head around how stupid that is. Seriously think my parents might be Neanderthals. Anyways, the real story made others even more angry and more insistent that I apologize, and they were promptly blocked. I didn't answer any of my parents' texts, calls, and blocked them. I feel like I have a weight off my shoulders. I'm not concerned about my parents showing up at our apartment, as they moved away from my city last year. Me and Angel are planning a lovely trip, per advice of a lot of people that we thought was great, to France to visit his family during when the wedding will be taking place, which I'm very excited for. I've heard nothing but good things about them. This will most likely be my only update on this post, and I thank you all for your support.